The Sleepwalkers Covenant. I never thought much about sleepwalking until I woke up standing in the middle of my living room, staring at the front door. My heart pounded as I tried to piece together how I had gotten there. The last thing I remembered was lying in bed, listening to the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Now, here I was, barefoot on cold hardwood floors, bathed in moonlight that streamed through the windows. My hands trembled when I reached for the doorknob, not because I wanted to open it, but because they felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else. The urge to leave was overwhelming, a pull so strong it made my chest ache. I fought it, gripping the edge of the couch until my knuckles turned white. Sweat dripped down my temples, and my breath came in shallow gasps. Something inside me screamed to run, to follow whatever invisible thread tugged at my mind, but I resisted. Instead, I stumbled back to bed, collapsing onto the mattress with exhaustion that went deeper than sleep. When morning came, I told myself it was just stress, nothing more. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. It happened again 2 nights later. This time, I found myself outside, standing in the dew-soaked grass of my backyard. My pajamas clung damply to my skin, and my feet were caked with mud. Panic surged through me as I looked around, searching for any sign of what had brought me here. Nothing seemed out of place. The swing set swayed gently in the breeze. The garden gnomes stared blankly into the darkness, but everything felt wrong. I noticed something new this time. There were footprints leading away from the house, not just mine, but others too. They crisscrossed the yard in chaotic patterns before disappearing into the woods behind my property. My stomach churned as I followed them, drawn by an instinct I could not explain. The trees loomed tall and menacing, their branches clawing at the sky. I stopped at the edge of the forest, unable to go further, yet unwilling to turn back. That was when I saw it, a faint glow pulsing between the trunks, like fireflies dancing in unison. It called to me, whispering promises I could not understand. When I finally returned home, I scrubbed my feet raw in the shower, trying to wash away the filth and fear. Sleep eluded me for hours, and when it finally came, it brought nightmares filled with shadows moving in perfect harmony. Days passed without incident, and I began to convince myself that the episodes were over. Then I met him. He appeared one afternoon while I was walking through town, a gaunt man with hollow eyes and clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. He didn't speak, only handed me a folded piece of paper before disappearing into the crowd. Back at home, I unfolded the note with trembling fingers. Scrawled across the page in shaky handwriting were 3 words. "You're next." Beneath them was a crude drawing of stick figures walking in a line, all connected by thin threads tied to their ankles. A chill ran down my spine as I stared at the image, unable to shake the feeling that it meant something important. That night, I locked every door and window, barricaded myself in my bedroom, and waited. Despite my precautions, I still woke up outside, standing in the same spot in the backyard where I had seen the footprints. Only now they were fresher, darker, as if many people had walked there recently. I scanned the horizon, my pulse racing, and realized I wasn't alone. Shapes moved in the distance, silhouettes shuffling toward the woods. Sleep became torture. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard whispers, soft and insistent, urging me to join them. At first, I thought it was my imagination, a trick played by my tired mind. But the voices grew louder, clearer, until they drowned out all other thoughts. They spoke in languages I didn't recognize, their tones shifting between soothing and menacing. One phrase repeated itself constantly, echoing in my skull. "Come to us." It wasn't a request. It was a command. I clenched my fists and bit my lip until I tasted blood, anything to block out the sound. Still, they persisted, seeping into my dreams and waking moments alike. During the day, I researched sleep disorders, hoping to find an explanation for what was happening. What I discovered terrified me even more. Articles described cases similar to mine people who wandered aimlessly at night, driven by forces beyond their control. Most ended tragically, with victims either vanishing or turning violent. One account mentioned a cult called the Sleepwalkers Covenant, a group rumored to believe that humanity could evolve only during sleep. The idea sounded absurd, yet it gnawed at the edges of my sanity. Could there be truth to it? Was I part of something larger, something ancient and incomprehensible? I woke up with a sharp pain in my arm. At first, I thought I had scratched myself in my sleep, but when I examined the area, I found a series of strange symbols carved into my skin. They glowed faintly under the light, pulsating in rhythm with my heartbeat. Horror gripped me as I traced the marks with trembling fingers. They weren't random, they formed a pattern, intricate and deliberate, like some kind of sigil. My reflection in the mirror offered no answers, only a pale face etched with fear. I couldn't remember receiving the wounds, nor could I recall seeing them before. The realization hit me hard. Whatever was controlling me had marked me as its own. Later that evening, I ventured into town, desperate for answers. People avoided eye contact, their expressions guarded. Some crossed the street to stay away from me. I caught glimpses of others watching me from behind curtains or peering out of shop windows. Their stares lingered, heavy with suspicion. When I returned home, I locked myself inside and taped black garbage bags over the windows. Darkness enveloped the house, muffling the world outside. Yet even in the suffocating quiet, the voices remained, whispering promises of freedom and transformation. Another sleepless night stretched endlessly before me. I sat hunched over the kitchen table, clutching a flashlight like a weapon. Shadows danced along the walls, taunting me with shapes that shouldn't exist. Each creak of the house sent adrenaline coursing through my veins. Then the knocking started. Soft at first, almost hesitant, it grew louder and more insistent. My throat tightened as I crept to the door, peering through the peephole. No one was there. Relief washed over me briefly until I noticed the footprints again, this time leading directly to my porch. I grabbed a knife from the drawer and braced myself against the wall. The knocking resumed, accompanied by a low chanting that vibrated through the floorboards. It sounded like dozens of voices speaking in unison, their words distorted yet hypnotic. Summoning what little courage I had left, I flung open the door. The street was empty, bathed in eerie silence. But the air shimmered unnaturally, as if reality itself had shifted. In the distance, figures emerged from the fog, their movements synchronized. They walked toward me, their faces obscured by shadow. I slammed the door shut and bolted it, pressing my back against the wood as tears streamed down my cheeks. The chanting continued, growing louder, closer. The chanting seeped through the cracks in the walls, crawling into my ears like insects. I covered them with my hands, screaming to drown out the sound, but it did no good. It wasn't coming from outside anymore, it was inside me, resonating in my bones and twisting my thoughts into something unrecognizable. I stumbled to the bathroom, desperate for a distraction. My reflection stared back at me, wide-eyed and hollow-cheeked. For a moment, I thought I saw someone else standing behind me in the mirror, their face blurred and indistinct. I spun around, heart hammering, but there was nothing there. When I turned back, the figure was gone. That's when I noticed the symbols on my arm had spread. They now wrapped around my wrist like shackles, glowing faintly even in the harsh fluorescent light. Panic surged through me as I scrubbed at them with soap and water, scratching until my skin bled. The marks didn't fade. If anything, They grew brighter, more defined. My mind fractured further as the night wore on. Memories surfaced without warning, images of places I'd never been, faces I didn't recognize. In one vivid flash, I saw myself walking alongside others, our movements perfectly synchronized as we followed a path lit by that same pulsing glow from the woods. The memory felt real, tangible, yet impossible. By morning, I was exhausted, both physically and mentally, but sleep offered no relief. Every time I closed my eyes, the voices returned, louder and more insistent than before. They whispered promises of peace, of unity, of transcendence. And though part of me recoiled in terror, another part leaned closer, drawn to their hypnotic allure. I couldn't stay in the house any longer. The walls seemed to close in on me, suffocating me with their silence. I needed answers, and I knew where to find them. The woods called to me, not just in my dreams, but during the day as well. Their pull was relentless, irresistible. Against every instinct screaming at me to turn back, I stepped into the forest. The air was thick with moisture, and the scent of earth filled my nostrils. Shadows danced between the trees, shifting unnaturally as if alive. Each step took monumental effort, as though invisible weights dragged at my ankles. Soon, I encountered the others. They moved slowly, deliberately, their eyes vacant and glassy. Some wore tattered clothing, while others were barefoot and covered in dirt. Their faces were familiar yet alien, like distorted reflections of people I might have known once. One figure stood apart from the rest, a woman with long, matted hair and skin stretched too tightly over her bones. Her lips moved silently, forming words I couldn't hear. She extended a hand toward me, beckoning me closer. My body responded before my mind could protest, pulling me forward against my will. The group surrounded me, their cold hands brushing against my arms and shoulders. They began to chant, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of sound. The ground beneath us trembled, and the trees swayed violently despite the absence of wind. A bright light erupted in the distance, illuminating the path ahead. The light led us to a clearing deep within the woods, where an ancient stone altar stood at its center. Carvings covered its surface, depicting scenes of human figures merging into shadowy forms. The symbols matched those etched into my skin, glowing with the same unnatural luminescence. At first, I thought the gathering was some kind of ritual, but it quickly became clear that this was no ordinary ceremony. The participants weren't human, not entirely. Their bodies shimmered, flickering between solid and translucent states. Some had already begun to transform, their limbs elongating and their features dissolving into amorphous shapes. A figure emerged from the crowd, taller and more imposing than the rest. Its presence radiated power, commanding attention without uttering a single word. Its face was featureless, smooth, and pale like polished marble. It raised an arm, pointing directly at me. The others parted, creating a pathway that led straight to the altar. My legs carried me forward involuntarily, each step heavier than the last. Fear clawed at my chest, but resistance was futile. Whatever this entity was, it had chosen me. As I approached the altar, fragments of understanding pierced through the haze in my mind. This wasn't about evolution or transformation, it was consumption. The Sleepwalkers Covenant wasn't guiding humanity toward enlightenment. It was feeding on it, harvesting souls to sustain itself. Standing before the altar, I felt the weight of inevitability pressing down on me. The entity loomed closer, its form shifting and writhing like smoke caught in a breeze. Its touch was ice cold, sending waves of nausea through my body. The others chanted louder now, their voices rising to a deafening crescendo. The symbols on my arm burned fiercely, their glow spreading across my entire body. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My vision blurred, and the world around me dissolved into chaos. In that moment, I understood what awaited me. I would become one of them, neither living nor dead, trapped in eternal servitude to the entity. My individuality, my memories, my very essence would be stripped away, leaving only a shell to be used and discarded. But even as despair consumed me, a spark of defiance ignited within. If this was to be my fate, I would fight it with everything I had left. Summoning the last remnants of my willpower, I focused all my energy on resisting the pull. For a fleeting second, the entity hesitated, its grip faltering. Light exploded outward, engulfing the clearing in blinding brilliance. When it faded, the woods were silent, and I was alone. Or so I thought. The silence in the woods was deafening after the light faded. I stood frozen, my body trembling as the cold seeped into my bones. The symbols on my arm pulsed faintly, their glow dimmer now, but still present, like embers refusing to die out. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Had I imagined it all, or had something truly intervened? Then it spoke not with words, but with images that flooded my consciousness. I saw vast landscapes of shadow and flame, cities swallowed by darkness, and countless figures marching in unison toward an endless void. Their faces were blank, their movements mechanical, yet there was a strange beauty to it, a harmony that both repelled and fascinated me. The entity's voice echoed in my skull, low and resonant, vibrating through every nerve ending. It wasn't angry or cruel. It was patient, almost kind. "You resist," it said, its tone devoid of emotion. "But resistance is futile. You have been chosen." I wanted to scream, to deny its words, but my throat felt paralyzed. Instead, I watched helplessly as more visions unfolded of myself walking among the others, my features blurred and indistinct, my eyes empty. In those moments, I understood. This wasn't just about consumption. It was about erasure. Whatever made me would vanish, leaving behind only a hollow shell. When the visions ended, I collapsed to my knees, gasping for air. The forest around me seemed darker, heavier, as if reality itself had shifted. I knew then that running was pointless. The entity was everywhere, watching, waiting. Days passed, or maybe hours. Time became meaningless. I wandered aimlessly between the woods and my house, unsure which place felt safer. Neither offered refuge. At home, the walls seemed to close in on me, whispering secrets I couldn't decipher. In the forest, the trees loomed taller, their branches twisting into grotesque shapes that resembled reaching hands. Sleep eluded me entirely. When exhaustion finally claimed me, my dreams were worse than wakefulness. I relived the ritual over and over, seeing fragments of memories that weren't mine. Faces flashed before me, people I'd never met, places I'd never been. They called to me, urging me to join them, promising peace and unity. Reality fractured further with each passing moment. Objects moved when I wasn't looking. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the floor, shifting even when no light source changed. Once, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and froze. My reflection smiled back at me, though I hadn't moved my lips. Its eyes glowed faintly, matching the symbols on my arm. Desperation clawed at my mind. I searched online for answers, scouring forums and articles about sleep disorders and paranormal phenomena. Most were dead ends, but one thread caught my attention. A user claiming to have escaped the Sleepwalkers Covenant. Their account was fragmented and disjointed, but one sentence stood out. It feeds on fear. Don't let it see you break. I clung to those words like a lifeline, repeating them silently whenever the voices grew too loud. I decided to visit the stranger who had given me the note weeks earlier. Something about his warning lingered in my mind, gnawing at me like an unanswered question. If anyone knew how to fight this thing, it had to be him. Finding him wasn't easy. He lived on the outskirts of town, in a dilapidated house surrounded by overgrown weeds. When I knocked, he opened the door cautiously, his hollow eyes widening when he saw me. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, stepping aside to let me in. His home was cluttered with books and papers, all covered in cryptic notes and diagrams. "I need your help," I said, my voice shaking. "You warned me. You must know something." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "The Covenant. It's older than you think, older than humanity itself. It preys on our weaknesses, our desire for connection. But it doesn't stop there. It consumes everything." As he spoke, I noticed the same symbols etched into his skin, glowing faintly beneath his sleeves. My stomach churned as realization dawned. "You're one of them," I accused, backing away. His expression hardened. "No, not yet. But I will be soon. And so will you." Before I could react, he lunged at me, his movements swift and unnatural. We struggled briefly, but he was stronger, his grip unrelenting. As he pinned me to the ground, I saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't fighting the entity, he was embracing it. I managed to escape, fleeing into the night with bruises forming on my arms and terror coursing through my veins. The stranger's betrayal left me reeling, but it also clarified one thing. There was no ally, no savior. I was alone. That night, the pull toward the woods was unbearable. My body moved without my consent, carrying me deeper into the forest until I reached the clearing once again. The altar stood at its center, pulsing with energy. Figures gathered around it, their forms flickering like static on a television screen. The entity appeared, its presence suffocating. It extended a hand toward me, and this time I didn't resist. Exhaustion had taken its toll, and part of me, a dark, desperate part, wanted to give in. But as I stepped closer, a memory surfaced, my mother's voice, soft and comforting, telling me stories as a child. She used to say, even in the darkest nights, there's always a spark of light, summoning the last remnants of my strength. I focused on that spark. Rage surged within me, burning brighter than the entity's cold influence. I screamed, pouring every ounce of defiance into the sound. For a brief moment, the entity faltered, its form wavering. The others paused, their synchronized movements disrupted. The entity recovered quickly, its rage palpable. It struck me with a force that sent me sprawling to the ground. Pain exploded through my body, but I refused to yield. In that instant, I understood its true purpose. It wasn't just consuming souls, it was rewriting existence, erasing individuality to create a perfect, unified whole. Free will, emotion, creativity, all would vanish, replaced by a single, collective consciousness. But why? Why destroy humanity's essence? The answer came unbidden, because it feared us. Our unpredictability, our capacity for change, threatened its perfection. By absorbing us, it sought to eliminate the chaos we represented. With newfound clarity, I realized what I had to do. Using the last of my strength, I smashed the altar with a nearby rock. Cracks spread across its surface, releasing a torrent of light and sound. The entity shrieked, its form dissolving into nothingness. The others collapsed, their bodies convulsing as the connection binding them shattered. When the chaos subsided, I was alone in the clearing. The woods were silent, the oppressive weight lifted. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. But freedom came at a cost. The symbols on my arm remained, a permanent reminder of what I had endured. Worse still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the entity wasn't truly gone, it was merely dormant, waiting for another host. As I walked away from the forest, I glanced back once. Between the trees, I thought I saw a pair of glowing eyes watching me, and then they blinked.